Oh, he was asked the rabbi, right? Yes, it's very beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful stories in there too.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's beautiful too. Beautiful.
I knew you were here, so I'll say. I know Miss Morris is here, so. Please go, please.
Morris, you could send to the group that we're on? Thank you very much.
Please go. I'll be leaving all over there later on. I send you the.
Yes, I have to speak to the person that deals with that. We have, I have to, yes, yes, no problem. Okay, good morning, everybody. We are on Mem Zayin Base 47B. The last thing we said yesterday, we were talking about who's called an Amoretz. And Rashi, usually you translate Amoretz, someone who's not so educated. But the Gemara is being more specific. What does it mean they're called an Amoretz? And Rashi learns the Gemara that, many times in the Gemara it refers to someone, it mentions the word Amoretz. What is an Amoretz? What level of a person is an Amoretz? Page Mem Zayin Base 47B. Good morning, Mr. Haber. So one of the opinions we had yesterday, we had all different opinions. A person who doesn't say the Shema in the morning or in the evening, that's called an Amoretz. Someone who doesn't put on tefillin, someone who doesn't wear tzitzit on a four-cornered garment. All different opinions in the Gemara. And the last opinion of the Gemara was even a person who's who's learned. He learns Chumash, he knows how to read Chumash, he knows how to learn Mishnah, but he does not serve rabbis. He does not go to a yeshiva to go to the rabbi to explain to him the reasons of the law. It's like an independent scholar who just opens up a book, opens up a Mishnah, but doesn't understand what's the reason for the Mishnah. And if you don't understand the reason for the Mishnah, for the law, it's the Hebrew case, law, and reason. You could have a case, you could have a law, but if you don't know what the reason behind it is, then you're going to go ahead and make big mistakes. You're going to have another situation, and you're going to compare it, but they're not comparable because you don't understand that the reason for that law was because of A, and this is a different situation. So therefore, if a person only learns Mishnah, then he's still an Amoretz. You're still considered someone who doesn't really have full understanding because you don't have clarity on what it's all about, and you're going to make great mistakes. So that's what the Gemara said. And according to one opinion in the Gemara, therefore that person you cannot join into a zimun. A zimun is only for a person who's on a higher level than that. And the halacha says today we do accept people who don't reach that level. We still join them into a zimun, but there's an opinion in the Gemara that says you wouldn't join such a person in. There's another opinion that says someone who doesn't take off his masrot properly, someone who's not careful about taking off his masrot. That type of person, is not someone you should be having a zimun with. And even that, but Tosfos says that today when we will join different types of Amoretz into the zimun, because if you're not going to join him into the zimun, there's a concern that he's going to go ahead and leave the whole Judaism. If you don't join him into, as if you're saying that maybe he'll feel I'm not like everybody else, and therefore I'll go ahead and I'll do my own thing. So therefore we do join him into the Morning Solomon. That's what we said yesterday. So today the Gemara continues on this idea. So that somebody who did not, based on that last opinion that we had, and the Gemara actually said an opinion that says that's the halacha, that what's called an amoretz, someone who did not serve under a rabbi to explain him the reasons for the law. And you should know, if someone wants to be a posek, if someone wants to be a posek in halacha, you have to serve under another great rabbi. You have to serve under him, ask him the questions, let him explain all the different details. So that's what we're up to in the Gemara. The Gemara, Rami Bar Chama, the first word of the line is Huna. First word of the line is Huna. Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama, everyone have it? Lo azmin aleh de Rab Menashe bar Tachlifa. Rami Bar Chama did not count into the zimun. By the way, did everyone read your message, by the way, Morris? Did they see if they read the message? Few people did read it. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So Rami Bar Chama did not want to count Rab Menashe bar Tachlifa. That means to say, let's say, you want to have you invite someone, join us to eat with us because we want to have a zimun. And he did not want to join. He did not want to invite and join and count Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa. Why didn't he want to count Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa into the zimun? Even though Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa, the Tana Sifra is like different. It darshans the psukim on Sefer Vayikra. Vayikra, it's called Torah's Kahanim.
Rabbi, good morning.
Good morning, Aaron. Shalom Aleichem. So even though this person was learned in the Sifra, that means he knew the explanations of the post. He knew different. He heard different things that are expounded upon on the Sifra. The Sifra is on Sefer Vayikra. The Sifrei, and he also knew Sifrei is those brightos that explain, also that they explain Sefer Bamidbar and Sefer Devarim. So even though he knew that, and the Hilchasa, and he also knew halacha. And what was the halacha that he knew? Let's say he knew Torah Shabbal Peh, he knew oral law. Some say Hilchasa means Mishnayot. He knew Mishnayot. The Mishnayot are like halacha. Mishnayot are just, they tell you what the law is. So he was learned in these aspects, but the thought was, Rami Bar Chama thought that Rav Menashe did not serve under other rabbis. He did not serve them, spend time with them, and learn from them to understand the differences and the explanations of all the different laws. And because he was under the impression that the other rabbi did not serve under other rabbis to get the clarity and the meaning of all the laws, he said, I cannot include him into the zimun. That was his reason. And again, Sifra and Sifriya will refer to him as like the midrash, they darshan the psukim, and like they'll tell you where the halacha is hinted to in the pasuk, but it's focused on the halacha. It's focused on the bottom line. It's not focused on the reasoning behind it. So because this rabbi was under the impression that the other rabbi was not, did not have proper shimush, did not serve properly under another rabbi, I cannot join him into the zimun. He's disqualified to be part of the zimun. And what happened, the Gemara says? And what happened was, it seems that Rami Bar Chama, the one who did not join the other rabbi, passed away a little younger than was maybe that maybe was the norm. And someone else gets up and says, you know why I think he passed away younger? because he did not join the other rabbi into the zimun. And the Gemara, we'll see the Gemara is gonna say what did he do wrong? The Gemara is gonna say, I'm just talking about the Gemara, playing out the Gemara for a second. So what did he do wrong? The other rabbi did not serve under other rabbis, therefore he's not fit to be part of the zimun. So the Gemara says he did serve under other rabbis, but the rabbi who did not include him didn't recognize that, didn't see that. That was the mistake. And I want to just say, it's similar to the students of Rabbi Akiva, right? We know we came off of Svira wasn't so long ago. We know why did the students of Rabbi Akiva pass away? Because they did not give proper kavod. They were in their level of, they were great tzaddikim. It's hard for us to understand how, but in their level, they didn't give the proper respect that was due to each other. So it seems that that's what Hashem gets is very strong about people who don't give the proper respect to another. And therefore here they didn't give the proper respect to that rabbi. And therefore he passed away younger than. That's what. Now we're going to read it inside. Everybody has it. Mr. Haber, when Rabbi Chama passed away, Amar Rava. So the great Rava, we all hear about Rava and Abaye. Rava is one of the most frequently quoted rabbis in the whole Shas. Amar Rava. So Rava says, Lo Noach Nafshed Rabbi Chama. The reason he did not die early, Ella the Lo Azmin ad Rav Menashe bat Achlifa, because he did not include Rav Menashe bat Achlifa in the Zimun, and because he did not count him into the Zimun, there was a lack of respect for the other rabbi, and most probably the other rabbi might have been insulted. And when a person's insulted, when a great person is insulted, God takes that, and it's very dangerous for the other person who gave the insult. Now, the Gemara, and here we see, even though it was a mistaken insult, the rabbi thought that the other rabbi, but the fact at the end of the day is the other person was insulted, the respect wasn't given, and that's how strong the power of not giving respect to someone. Vatanya, the Gemara says, what did he do wrong? Achirim omrim. We said afilu kara v'shana v'lo shimish tamid hacham harzam aretz. Even a person knows Chumash and knows Mishnah. So even though the rabbi, but if as long as he did not serve on the other rabbi to explain to him the meaning of the halacha, it's called an amaret, and you don't join him into the simun.
Rabbi.
Yes.
There is a story about Chafetz Chaim that he was traveling one day to give a drasha somewhere, and it's before the time was recording and everything, and he was taking the train, and he was sitting next to somebody, and somebody like he started talking to him, and he didn't recognize it's Chafetz Chaim, and he told him, I'm going to see the Gaon Baal Ador Chafetz Chaim to hear his drasha. And the Chafetz Chaim told him, like, oh, I just heard it. It's a simple guy, it's nothing much. So the guy standing there, slap him on his face. And the Chafetz Chaim continue, and he say to him, he's maybe a simple guy, but, he's just like Am Haaretz, as you says, and the guy slapping to him is like, he can't talk about Chafetz Chaim like that. When they got to the station, everybody is waiting for him, and the guy understand that he was talking to him about that. And he was apologized to Chafetz Chaim, and Chafetz Chaim, so I wrote a book about halachot of behaving to each other. Now I have to add another halacha: do not talk about yourself in a negativity.
Negative way.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So the Gemara says, "Shiny Rav Menashe bat Achlifa." Rav Menashe bat Achlifa de Meshabel Lehu L'Rabbanan. He did serve the Chachamim. And therefore he was not Amaretz. The Rami Bar Chama who the Lodaka Batre. Rami Bar Chama did not investigate sufficiently to realize that that's what happened, and therefore he made that mistake. On Lishna Achrina, there's a different language of the Gemara. The Shomesh Maita Mepumad Rabbanan, Vigaris Lahu, that he heard besides hearing the Mishnayot, he heard the reasons from the Chachamim, and therefore Kisuma Rabbanan Dami. He's really like a Talmud Chacham, He's not an Amoaretz. And therefore, that was the mistake that the other rabbi didn't realize that. Okay, so we just see for a big lesson we see from here is the importance of giving proper kavod to someone, proper respect to someone, and how Hashem is very makpid. Hashem is very particular when people are not being given the right respect. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah to explain our Mishnah. Achal tevel u'maiser rishon. The Mishnah says there are certain people we cannot count into the zimun. If a person ate, if the food was not kosher, that the bread was not kosher, you can't join him into the zimun. How is the bread not kosher? The bread's not kosher if, let's say, if it was not taken off, the trumot and the masrot were not taken off. It's not kosher. Same way you can't drink, right, Solomon? We can't drink and eat until we say a bracha. We can't go ahead and eat the food until we take off the types, the masrot and the truma. If we don't take it off, right? We planted, we harvested, we threshed it, ground it. It's a finished product. We have to take it off. If we don't take it off, we can't eat it. So it's not allowed to be eaten. That's called tevel. So the
what about somebody is not Jewish that grow the wheat on Eretz Israel?
So that's a good question. I think there's a discussion about that. Do the goyim have the power to? They might not have the. I think we hold that it has to be taken off. I think in practice, I think we hold that they don't have the power to remove the holiness from the crop. So I would think we hold that you would have to take off. You would have to take off. So the Gemara says, good morning, Avram, good morning, Shmuel. So the Gemara says, Tevel is, if the guy ate Tevel, you can't count them into the Zimun. So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious. And the Rambam writes very eloquently in his explanation to the Mishnah does not tell us something that's obvious. The Mishnah tells us, the Mishnah doesn't tell us something that's obviously forbidden or obviously permitted. The Mishnah tells us laws of things that you might have come to a different conclusion without the Mishnah telling us. The Mishnah does not tell us the obvious. So therefore, the Gemara's question is, you'll find many Gemaras that ask anytime something seems to be obvious, the Gemara says, Pshita. It's obvious. You don't need to tell me. That's not the job of the Tana of the Mishnah. Tell me something that I don't know. That's not obviously known. You have to tell me something that I might not have known clearly. It's not 100% clear. So that's the Gemara's question, Pshita. So the Gemara says, by the way, but we mentioned before in the Gemara, the word halachot. And the Aruch says, the laws of the Torah are called halacha, because the word halacha comes from the word of holech. This is how you have to go. You have to act. That's why it's called. And he says they go to the light of the law, and they conduct themselves based on that law. So that's why it's called the halacha, because the halacha is supposed to be something how we follow, what we go. This is what we do. So the Gemara says, Shita. So the Gemara says, Lo tzricha. We need it for the following case. But tevil tavul d'Rabbanan. There's certain times the food, the grain is subject to truma and meiser from a Torah level, and sometimes it's subject to truma and meiser rabbinically. What will be the case? Something that grows from the ground. That's what the Torah says. Hayotze hasadeh. The Torah says something that comes out from the ground. You have to go in and take off truma and meiser. But what about you have a flower pot? You put some soil in a pot, and it's not in the ground. The soil is detached from the ground. It's not called aref. And then you went ahead and you grew some crops in that. You grew some wheat in that pot. On a Torah level, it's not subject to the types. But rabbinically, the rabbis, I presume the reason is the rabbis are concerned that if you don't take off maaser when it grows in the pot, you're not going to take off maaser when it grows on the ground. So the rabbis say that you have to take off maaser on that type of food that grew in a pot, okay? So the Gemara says that's the chidush. The chidush is that even though it's only called tevel rabbinically, on a Torah level, this food was 100% kosher, but nevertheless, you can't count him into the zimun. You can't count this person into the zimun because it was tevel d'Rabbanan, forbidden d'Rabbanan to eat this food. That's what the Gemara says. But tevel tavol d'Rabbanan, heichi dami. What's the case that it's tevel d'Rabbanan? But it says she'ein lakuf, a pot that does not have a hole on the bottom. Meaning to say, if you have a flower pot and it has holes on the bottom, then and you put it on the ground, that flower pot, it's resting on the ground with holes on the bottom, then it's going to get its nutrients, nourishment from the ground. That's called from the ground. You'll have many scenarios in the Gemara that discuss these type of situations. When you does the pot have a hole in the ground on the bottom of the pot or not? That's all about getting nourishment from the ground, and that connects it to the ground if you're having the nourishment from the ground. So that's what the Gemara says. But here, if the pot has a hole in the bottom, if the pot has a hole in the bottom, we look at it the same way you look at ground. It would seem that we characterize it. It's as if it's on the ground itself, or whatever the laws are for something that grows from the ground. That will be the same law. Then the laws are the obligation of giving tithes is only when you finish processing the food. That means you went ahead and you cut it, and then you threshed it, you ground it, and then you made a pile. Once you make the pile, we gave a mushal. It's like rent due. When is the rent due? The rent is due the first of the month. So until you go ahead and you threshed it and you did all that and you made it to a nice pile, now until then it's not due yet. But at that point, now it's due. You have to give it to that's when it's due. So the Gemara says, Meiser Rishon. The next case the Gemara is trying to analyze. The Mishnah mentions the case of if Meiser Rishon, when you give to the Levi, you give 10% to the Levi, and the Levi has to give from his share, his 10% that he receives, he has to give 10% to the Kohen. That's the Levi's responsibility. Now, if the Levi did not take off the 10% to the Kohen, so then the Levi that means the Levi, it's also, in a sense, it's not fixed food. It's not able to be eaten because he did not take off the 10% that he needs to give to the Kohen. So the Gemara's question is, isn't that obvious? If the Levi did not take off his truma that he needed to give to the Kohen, this food is forbidden to be eaten, and therefore you can't have a zimun with somebody who ate food. Zimun is about we all come together and we're having a proper sitting, we're sitting properly together as a group. And this is the type of group that the Chachamim, when you have three people coming together, the Chachamim said there's a mitzvah of zimun, of saying a joint bracha. But that's not if one of the members of the group doesn't belong there. Not if one of the members of the group is eating something that's not supposed to be eaten. That's not where the Chachamim say you should say a bracha together. This type of, this guy doesn't belong here. He has no right eating this food. That's not a thing that you, so the Gemara, so what's the chidush of the Mishnah? That the Mishnah says that if the Levi did not take off the 10% that he needs to give to the Kohen, and he ate with you, you can't count them in. Of course you can't count them in. The food was not kosher. It didn't do what needs to be done. So the Gemara answers, Lo tzricha kegon shekdimu b'kri. What's the case talking about? That the Levi got his 10%, and remember, we had the story before that the Kohen, if you're the Israel, you planted a wheat, you have a responsibility to give to the Kohen his share. First, you give 2%. The owner, the Israel, gives 2%. The average is he gives 1/50th, 2% to the Kohen, the average guy. A guy with a nice eye gives 2.5% to the Kohen. And then after you give the 2% to the Kohen, you go in and you give 10% to the Levi, okay? Now, what happened if the Levi got his 10% before the Israel gave his 2% to the Kohen? So that's the case that the Mishnah is talking about. What's the case? The Truma wasn't taken off? Not the Truma that the Levi is supposed to give. The Truma that the Israel, see, the Kohen gets two types of Truma. From the Israel, he gets a percentage, and the Kohen gets from the Levi a percentage. From the Israel, he gets 2% on average. From the Levi, he gets 10%. Okay? If the Levi got his share before the Kohen got his 2% of that food, that's the case of the Mishnah. And we said that there's an interesting phenomenon that if the Levi got his 10% early, before the food was processed and ground and threshed and ground and made into a pile, he got it when it was still in its raw state in the stalks. We said in the Gemara that there's a special dispensation that the Levi, if he gets it at that point, he will not have to give that 2% that was supposed to have been given to the Kohen originally. He would only have to give his 10%. So therefore, the Mishnah is telling us, the Chiddush of the Mishnah is that even though the Levi could get away with not have to give the 2% that originally was supposed to be given, if the Levi took it when it was in the stalks, but if the Levi got it after it was already fully processed, and the Truma that was supposed to be given to the Kohen was not yet given from the Israel, that food is like not kosher. And if the Levi ate that food, even though the Levi gave 10% to the Kohen, but it was missing the original 2% that the Israel was supposed to give, that's what the Mishnah is telling us, that will invalidate him from being part of the Zimur. Excuse me. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Mahu de Tema, you might have thought, Kida Amale Rav Papa Abaye. You might have, now why does the Mishnah have to tell us? Because you might have thought like a Papa said to Abaye. A Papa said to Abaye that the pasuk says you take off Maaseh and a Maaseh. You only take off one tithe from the Maaseh, but you don't take Trumas Hashem Maaseh and a Maaseh. But I might have thought you should not take off, the Levi will only have responsibility to take off one tithe, the 10%, and he would not have to take off the second tithe, the 2% that was owed. Therefore, the Mishnah tells us, Kamash Malan Kiddushani Le, like the Gemara says, that once the food was fully processed, it's like the first of the month kicked in, like the rent is due. And if the Levi got it after it was fully processed, it was threshed and ground and in a pile, and it was smoothed down and the pile was already finished, then the Levi has to go not only give his 10% to the Kohen, from his part, he has to go give the 2% that was due to the Kohen. What did you say? Correct. 2%. Take it. So the way it goes is first thing is the Israel has to give 2% to the Kohen. First is the Kohen, the Israel, the owner of the field has to give, right, Sammy? The owner has to give 2% to the Kohen first, and then he gives 10% to the Levi. So, but it's right, but the way it is, it's 2%. If he gives 2%, it's 10% from the remaining. It's almost like 12%. Right. So it's like let's say you have 100 bushels of wheat. So that's you'll first give 2 bushels of wheat to the Kohen, and he has 98 left, and then he'll give 9.8 to the Levi.
What's the source of the
right. So there's something called Maaseh Ksafim. There's something called Maaseh on your money, on your business money. See, this is talking about maaser on your produce. So I would think it has to do with the maaser, something called maaser kisafim. You make a certain amount of money, and there's a pasuk that it's connected to. If you remind me, I'll try to look at the Aruch HaShulchan. If you remind me, I'll try to take out the Aruch HaShulchan about that. That's maaser on your earnings. Okay, let's continue in the Gemara. Okay, we got a new piece here. Maaser sheni. The Gemara said that also we know Maaser sheni. There's another thing that we got to do in the cycle. Every in the 7-year cycle, 7th year Shemitah, the first and second year, and it's repeated the 4th and 5th year. We take 10% of the produce after we give 2% to the Kohen, 10% to the Levi. Then we go ahead and we take 10%. That's called Maaser Sheni. It's the second Maaser. The first was the Maaser Rishon that we gave 10%. Maaser means Eser, 10. We gave Maaser Rishon to the Levi. And then we give Maaser, another 10%, belongs to us. What we got to do, but that's Maaser Sheni. We have to separate Maaser Sheni. We have to bring it to the old city. We have to bring it to the old city and eat it in the old city. If it's too hard for you to carry to the old city, you live in Tel Aviv, it's a little bit hard for you to carry. You redeem it onto coins, and then you take the coins and you bring the coins to the old city, and then you buy animals with it that you're going to eat. You buy other food. The Torah says a lot of different things you could buy with the Maaser Sheni coins. The Torah also says you have to give, if you're redeeming it, if you're not bringing it, you have to add a fifth. You have to add a fifth. Not only, and the way the Rambam says, see, there's two ways. How do you count the fifth? How do you count? There's a fifth, this inside and from the outside. Now, most people would have said $100, a fifth of $100 is 20. If I say I have to add a fifth, it would be, I got to add 20, that would be $120 worth to go and spend in Jerusalem. But the Rambam says the way we a fifth is one, after you add this amount, you make it into 5 parts. And this fifth, meaning it will be 25. He would say 25 is 1/5 of the total. After that's how you calculate it. Meaning if you add 25, then it's called a fifth from the outside. Now you have 5 parts, 25.
What do you add to the total?
Right there, guys. Great to see.
I'll be away tomorrow, back in a week.
Okay, so we're gonna miss you, Sammy.
Nobody will know I'm here, but just.
Yes. So that
because I don't know if I want to be back.
yes,
So
I'll
open the
yeah,
Haftarah,
yes,
go to
yes.
the Haftarah, and somebody give out that will and get somebody to read the Torah.
okay. We'll
Maybe read it and
thank you, Sammy.
call
Call me. We'll talk. I don't want to hold. I don't want to. Thank you very much. So that's how the Rambam says you would calculate the. You were saying, Solomon. You were saying.
That you're saying that you calculate it as what you need to sell, so that thing that you added is a fifth of the total.
Exactly. You said it very well. You should know. You know where you have this question is asked a lot. The Gemara has this question in Bava Kama. We learned it. Testament Beis. We learned it here in the Safra synagogue. When there's a special mitzvah, Hidur mitzvah. There's a special mitzvah to beautify a mitzvah. That means you have a mitzvah to have a esrog. There's a mitzvah to have a beautiful esrog. There's a mitzvah to have a mezuzah, a beautiful mezuzah, a beautiful sefer Torah. Every mitzvah that you do, there's something called Hidur mitzvah. Beautify the mitzvah. How much am I asked to spend more in beautifying the mitzvah? So the Gemara says also a shlit, a third. What's a third? I should be willing to give a third more to beautify the mitzvah. Very good. So let's say I have some that costs $6. It cost me $6 to do this mitzvah. So I would have to give a third more. So what's a third? Is it $2 more? Which would be a third of 6. From the inside of 6 is a third. Or a third, if you break it into 3 parts, that what I add on, it will be $3. Will be now what I added would be now it's a $3. The $6 now makes it this 3 parts of $3. The addition is a third of the total. That's the way to say it, like you said, right? The addition that I added is a third of the total. And therefore 3 added to 6. Exactly. And that's the question in the Gemara, and the Gemara does not conclude. The Gemara says Teku. The Gemara says we need Eliyahu Navi to come to answer that question regarding Hidur Mitzvah. The Shulchan Aruch discusses what the law is, but how do we act until then? But that's the Gemara's question over there, how to calculate the third. The Rambam clearly says, but the calculation of the third is from the outside, on the top, whatever Mr. Haber referred to it. And therefore, it would be 125 on the 100. Morning. Yeah, I'm going to, there's tefillin upstairs. You'll see when you come into the shul, on the right side, you'll see there's a talit and there's tefillin out. You could use it. No problem. Keep in mind also that Zman, sir, keep in mind that Zman Kriya Shema is in a couple, in about a few minutes. So keep in mind the Zman Kriya Shema. Okay. So that's what the Gemara says. Now, the Gemara says if a person, now, once you redeem the Masa Sheni, let's say it's too hard for you to carry it, you redeemed it, that means you said the holiness that's on these fruits. Now, Masa Sheni has to be eaten in Jerusalem. Now, if it's too hard for me to carry it, I redeem it onto coins, and once I redeem it onto coins, then I can eat it here in Tel Aviv. I don't need to eat it in Jerusalem. Like I take the coins to Jerusalem. But if the Mishnah says if a person ate Masa Sheni that he did not redeem it. And he's eating in Tel Aviv, and he didn't redeem it, it's not kosher. You can't eat it. You can't eat it here. You have to eat it in Jerusalem. So the Mishnah says you can't count them into the Zimun. So the Gemara's question is Pshita. Again, it's obvious. It's obvious you can't count them in. The Gemara says Pshita. So the Gemara says that the Mishnah is talking about that you redeemed it, but you didn't redeem it properly. The Torah says you have to redeem it on a Sarta Kesef. You have to redeem it on Kesef, and since it's Sarta, and the drush has to be as a tzura. It has to have some sort of picture. And I saw maybe Torah Tamima brings down maybe from the Rambam, it has to have, let's say, a picture, even letters on the coin. Not a plain piece of silver minted. It has to have some sort of engravement on the coin. The way I picked up from one of the commentaries, it seems like that also would help out in being used in the markets when things have some sort of markings and picture or writings or something. So maybe that's perhaps behind the law of why it's to be a type of coin that's very readily used in the business.
They bring in a soup though, through the point that
Right, because else you would not. I mean, how do you know the coin needs? You would have said that maybe if it's used as a currency, it might not need an image, might not need anything. You would have said just a plain piece of silver would be a flat piece of silver. You would have thought would be good enough. So therefore, the Gemara says there's a special law that's written by Ma'aser Sheni that has to be redeemed on a certain type of coin. That's what the Gemara says. Lo svicha sheniftu, b'shelo niftu. It wasn't redeemed properly. Ma'aser Sheni, the Gemara gives two cases because there's two cases. This Mishnah says Ma'aser Sheni wasn't redeemed or Hekdesh wasn't redeemed because they have the same thing. If I go ahead have a pile of wheat and I say I want to make it Hekdesh, I want to make it holy, I got to give it to the Beit HaMikdash and they'll deal with it and they'll sell it. They'll do whatever they want with it. But once I made it holy, I can't eat it. But if I want to redeem it, I say, I would like to eat it myself. I can also have an option of redeeming it also and adding a fifth. There's also have that option redeeming Hegdish. The same way I can redeem Ma'aser Sheni, I can redeem Hegdish. So the Gemara says, in both cases of the Mishnah, it was redeemed but not done the right way. Now, sometimes in life, when you don't do it in the way you're supposed to do it, you still get credit. And sometimes when you don't do it the way you're supposed to do it, you don't get credit. You put on tefillin and you didn't say a bracha before you put on tefillin, you still get credit for the mitzvah of tefillin. You didn't do it, you're supposed to say a bracha before you put on, but you put on the tefillin. But here, this requirement of redemption, if you didn't do this requirement, it's not no good. What does the Gemara say? Ma'aseh sheni kigon shepadu al gabi esimon. You redeemed it on a coin that has no image, no writing, no picture. Rachmana Amar, and the pasuk says, "V'sarta kesef biyadcha." The pasuk says you have to have the sarta, the kesef in your hands, and we say you bundle the money in your hand, but also the word sarta kesef sheyesh alav surah. It has to have some sort of image. And hegdish. And what's the case of hegdish that you don't get don't get credit? Shechilu agabe karka. Hegdish you have to redeem onto money, not onto land. Land you can't say, you know what, this hegdish that I want to redeem, I have a piece of property somewhere. I want that property to become. I'm going to redeem it onto that property, and the property now belongs to hegdish, and the food now you can't do that. You have to redeem on something movable, a movable item. Like coins. The Gemara says, "Hegdish kol shechil agabe karka, v'lo padu bekesef," and you didn't redeem with coins. Rachmana Amar, and the pasuk says, "V'nosan hakesef." You have to go ahead and give the kesef v'kamlo. Only if you give is kesef, and not property is not able to be used. So that's what the Gemara says. So even though the Gemara said earlier, if you went ahead and you redeemed it and you didn't add the fifth, the Gemara says it's still called redeemed. But if you redeemed it in this fashion, you didn't go ahead and you do it on the proper type of coin, that will hold back, that you will not get credit in the redemption. The last thing we're going to say today is Hashamash Achal Pochas B'Kazayis. The Mishnah says if the Shamash, they had a waiter, and the waiter ate less than a kazayit, you can't join. You have to, in order to join someone into the zimun, he has to eat a kazayit, an olive size. If you have three people at a table, and the other person he took a little bite of something, but he didn't eat a kazayit, he does not get credit. You cannot count him in to the zimun. He has to have a minimum size of a kazayit, of an olive size. And the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious. If you didn't eat a kazayit, it's not called real eating. Eating is called when you have at least a kazayit, like we find by matzah by Pesach. You have to have at least a kazayit. The Gemara answers, I did a ton of Reisha, kazayit, ton of sefer, b'chas kazayit. Since we found the Mishnah wanted to be uniform, and the Reisha mentioned if you ate a kazayit, then you count them in. So the sefer says if you didn't eat a kazayit, you don't count them in. Because many of the cases we needed to say both sides. Many of the cases of the Mishnah, we said one side, and then we said the other scenario. So here also the Gemara says, even we want the same way since we listed all those flip side cases of the other things, and there was a necessity, so even though there's no real need to tell us this case, but once we said both sides, like we said, Hegdish that was redeemed, and Hegdish that wasn't redeemed properly, so here we'll talk about the guy ate a kazayit, the guy ate less than a kazayit. Tell us both laws in both cases.
Rabbi, that's coming back to the same question. You're saying we cannot use them for making a zimun.
Right.
But we can use him, even if he didn't pray at all, we can use him for Kedusha, or we can use him for Kaddish.
Right, very good, because that's a good point, because zimun is about eating. If you don't eat, you can't count them into the zimun. But when it comes to tefillah, it's the idea of how many people you have. Even though other people, it's about people being there that also plays a great role.
So the other one was the reason why you need to say that you can't eat as a move.
Because since we wanted to keep the Mishnah uniform, because since the Mishnah said in the beginning, if you ate a kazayit, you could count them in. So now I'm going to tell you, but if you ate less than a kazayit, you cannot count them in. We want to keep. Because the Reisha had a chidush that a waiter, even though he's a waiter, and you might have thought a waiter is not really, you might have thought you can't count the waiter in, because a waiter is on the move, he's always going and coming. So you might have thought the zimun, you need three people to eat together. That's what the Mishnah said. And a waiter, you might have thought he's not called, he's ever eating together with you. He's always here and there and everywhere. Therefore, the Mishnah says the chidush in the ration. We have the Mishnah, excellent. That a waiter, you could count the waiter into the zimun. If he ate with you, so even though he's 1 foot here and 1 foot there, if he ate with you, you could count him into the zimun.
That's why I would argue you make a mistake. Because in the first case was that if you eat an olive, right, then you need to change your confidence, right? Then obviously you don't need to say it doesn't need the olive, but it's not counted. The fact is that he's a waiter, right, makes you think that, oh, because maybe because of that, so we have to say olive. That makes sense?
Because since he's a waiter and you need to tell me that case, so therefore you need to tell me the opposite case that also would work. That won't work. Very good. Okay, good. Have a great day, everybody. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.